How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. So today I wanted to go through a series of articles talking about stock tokens. And a lot of people are going, what are stock tokens? Well, this is why I wanted to talk about this particular subject today. So I have 4 articles here that I want to run through with everybody. 3 of them are from Investopedia. One is from CNBC, but they go through what's been happening here over the last couple of weeks here. So this first article is, what are these OpenAI and SpaceX stock tokens that Robinhood is giving away? So this basically says Robinhood earlier this week announced it would give away to eligible European users small tokenized stakes in private companies OpenAI and SpaceX. And offering OpenAI did not endorse, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Federal regulations currently prohibit investors with assets and income below a specific threshold from investing in private companies, which are subject to less stringent financial disclosure rules. In other words, you have to fall under the classification of what is known as an accredited investor, meaning that you have to make over, I think $300,000 annually as an individual, or have an investable net worth of $1 million outside of the value of your home. That's normally what you have to follow. I believe it's under security regulation D. Is part, like, in other words, if you wanted to get in on like an IPO or something like that, you would have to be you would have to meet that definition as an accredited investor in order to be able to offer to be able to get in on that, and that's what they're alluding to here. Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev argues tokenizing the equity of private companies will give everyday investors access to the outsized gains that can come from being an early investor in groundbreaking upstarts. So Robinhood Markets earlier this week said it would offer European users the option to trade stock tokens, and that it would give away $5 worth of tokenized stock in 2 major private companies, OpenAI and SpaceX, to eligible investors. OpenAI on Wednesday disavowed the offering, writing, "These OpenAI tokens are not OpenAI equity. We did not partner with Robinhood. We're not involved in this and do not endorse it." The company urged investors to please be careful. Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev responded in an X post on Wednesday night, "While it is true that they aren't technically equity, you could see the precise dynamics in our terms for those interested. The tokens effectively give retail investors exposure to these private assets." Separately, a spokesperson said that the tokens provide indirect exposure and are enabled by Robinhood's ownership stake in a special purpose vehicle. Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, has not commented publicly on the stock tokens, but he did seize the opportunity to take a jab at OpenAI, with which he has sparred in the past. Your equity is fake. Musk replied to the company's post. Now, remember, OpenAI is a nonprofit company. They're not a for-profit entity. They're certainly not publicly traded, nor is SpaceX. And then it goes into, what are stock tokens? So stock tokens are effectively the blockchain equivalent of equity. They represent one's transferable ownership stake in a company, but they differ from regular stock in a few key ways. First, they're traded on a blockchain rather than on a public exchange. Second, they can be stored in the investor's digital wallet rather than being held by a custodian like a brokerage. Third, because they are on-chain, they can be used in other decentralized finance activities like staking. And then it goes into, what are the pros of stock tokenization? Well, I'm going to get away from that for a second here, because I just want to say this is not stock. This is not stock. This is not equity in a business in any way, shape, or form. I don't even know what this is. I mean, this is kind of mind-blowingly wild. But again, it's not surprising to me. Robinhood, I'm not a fan of Robinhood. I don't care for this company or their CEO. I think they have done a lot of shady and unscrupulous things in the past, and that you should be very weary of using Robinhood or their app. So I'm not surprised that they would, concoct something like this. But let's run through something else here. So OpenAI says it does not endorse Robinhood stock token of ChatGPT maker. ChatGPT maker OpenAI distanced itself from the stock token project Robinhood announced earlier this week. OpenAI said tokenized versions of its stock are not official equity in the private company, and Robinhood said the assets wouldn't technically be equity. But then what would they be if they're not? If they're definitely not equity, so there's nothing technical about it. They're not. But would give European investors exposure to a range of public and private U.S. companies. Now, I believe that there is a very good reason that Robinhood basically rolled this out in Europe and not here in the U.S., because I think if they had rolled it out in the U.S., I think the SEC would have been all over them from day one. Now let's take a look at, so this is just a couple of days later. So Robinhood CEO downplays OpenAI concerns on tokenized stock structure. In a CNBC interview Tuesday, Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev defended the company's OpenAI and SpaceX stock tokens, given concerns over how they're structured. Last week, OpenAI issued a warning that Robinhood stock tokens do not represent equity in the company. In and of itself, I don't think it's entirely relevant that it's not technically an equity instrument, Tenev said. Like, again, like what? Like, what? Like, seriously, what? Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev said it's not entirely relevant. It's not relevant, really, that you're selling a product that's totally false and is not what it is purported to be. And that the trading platform also called tokenized shares of OpenAI and SpaceX are technically equity in the companies. It comes after OpenAI raised concerns about the product, which is designed to give users in the European Union exposure to various U.S. stocks. OpenAI last week warned that Robinhood stock tokens do not represent equity in the company and said in a post on X that any transfer of OpenAI equity requires our approval. We did not approve any transfer. Robinhood said its OpenAI stock tokens are enabled by Robinhood's ownership stake in a special purpose vehicle. Well, what does that have anything to do with OpenAI or SpaceX? Who cares whether they have some kind of ownership stake in some special purpose vehicle? Special purpose vehicles are another scam. That's another scam. Is it true that these are not technically equity? Tenev, who co-founded Robinhood, told CNBC Squawk Box, echoing his initial response to OpenAI's concern. Tenev said that OpenAI's complex company structure enables institutional investors to gain exposure to the company through various instruments like equity upon the event of a conversion to a for-profit at a later date. They're not converting to a for-profit at a later date. OpenAI that's already been settled. Like, that's not happening. Basically, that was a major Hail Mary on the part of Sam Altman, and it's not happening. So they're not going to convert to a nonprofit at a later time. And then finally, SoFi offers exposure to OpenAI and SpaceX through new private market funds. So now SoFi wants to get in on the action here. So SoFi Technologies said it's adding new private market funds offering exposure to startups like OpenAI and SpaceX. The funds have investment minimums as low as $10, well below what is required by some of its other private market funds. The move also comes after Robinhood last week said it would offer tokenized stakes of OpenAI and SpaceX to users in Europe. So SoFi Technologies said Tuesday it's adding new private market funds offering exposure to startups like OpenAI and SpaceX. The new funds are meant to expand access to investments in a wide range of private companies across AI, machine learning, space technology, consumer products, healthcare, e-commerce, and financial technology, SoFi said. They also have investment minimums as low as $10, well below what is required by some of its other private market funds, such as the $25,000 minimum for SoFi's Cosmos Fund, which offers exposure to SpaceX as well. SoFi said it is working with asset managers Cashmere, Fundrise, and Liberty Street Advisors to offer the funds. SoFi is expanding alternative investment opportunities for a new generation of investors. SoFi CEO Anthony Nodi said in a release, shares of SoFi rose nearly 4% Tuesday. This is just kind of crazy to me because, they're offering supposedly access to these companies' stock when they don't own these companies' stock. They don't have the right or the authority or the ability to sell these companies' stock. I mean, this is just crazy to me that the SEC would not be jumping in on this, and some of the other regulators involved would not be jumping in on this whole thing. I mean, this whole idea of tokenized or stock tokens, or some private investment fund. I mean, this is just crazy. I mean, it's just I hate to say it's outright fraud, but it literally seems to me to be that kind of situation. So again, be very, very mindful of these investments and the things that are out there right now. Be very cautious. Be careful about what you're doing with your money. Again, seek professional advisors. Go talk to financial advisors. Go talk to people who really understand and know about money management to get the best financial advice you could possibly get out there. And because again, I think this stuff is going to what all it's going to take is for one person to lose a ton of money, and the lawsuits are going to fly. And then a lot of the regulators of the questions will be, well, why, you guys, everybody saw this, so why didn't you guys shut it down the minute that these companies started proposing these kind of wild these wild products that basically they could not deliver on what they were saying. So anyway, then again, I thought this was a very interesting new product, new development, as it were, that was coming along. Just wanted to share this with people. So keep your eyes out there. So that being said, if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day out there. Thank you for listening, and I will see you again real soon.